Alright guys, welcome to this episode of False Fact Sports. Today, I'm going to be ranking quarterbacks, well not quarterbacks, players, based on how likely I think they are to win the MVP. Now, let's just get started. We got Josh Allen up first. And I think the Bills, I did a video on them. I think they're actually going to be a fine team this year. But I just don't really have them as an MVP favorite this year just because all the other teams going to be fine. The supporting cast is worse than the Chiefs around him. Not as good of a coach. Not quite as good of an O-line. I'd say the receivers are a little worse too, even though I do have some faith in them. So I think that I'm going to put him in the doesn't have the cast tier. I think that's the right tier for him because of everything I just said. Now, Joe Burrow, I feel like a lot of people are starting to get low on him. And honestly, I don't really see why. Obviously, he had the injury issues last year, and I think maybe that's why, but he's still a good quarterback. And I do honestly have him as a favorite this year. He still has T. Higgins. He lost Joe Mixon, though, but Jamar Chase as well. The O-line is fine, even. I really do think he has a solid shot at MVP this year. Although not quite. Maybe not my number one favorite, but he is definitely one of my top players to potentially win the MVP this year. Now, CMC next up. I don't really think he's going to quite fall off this year. Now, I don't really know if he's one of my favorites that's not a quarterback or if he's just kind of close. You know what I mean? Like I don't really know. We're going to put him here for now, but if I do decide to change it up, then I'll obviously make the adjustment. And I did put together all these players just based off of some of the highest odds, and I got rid of some players that I just don't think are going to do it. But I didn't really do a pre of this list. I just put together a bunch of players that I think can do it. But we're going to move on to Jordan Love, and I really like Jordan Love. I think I made that video of him a while back, and I've been a supporter of him since he was going to become the starter this past season. And I was telling my friends, I think we had a discussion about halfway through the year. They're like, oh, Jordan Love's not legit. He's not even top 20. But I was still saying that I believe that he's going to become top 10 or that he's currently even top 16. And he ended up going crazy for the rest of the year. But I don't really know if he's a true contender for MVP this year. I do believe in him to potentially be a top 5 quarterback this year. But I just don't know if he's actually going to be that quarterback or be the number one guy. I'd say that the cast, I think that it might be a little better just because of how the Packers have been than maybe Josh Allen's cast, but I also just believe in Josh Allen a little bit more than Jordan Love. Now, Patrick Mahomes is always an MVP favorite. Unless the Chiefs were to really go to crap and the Chiefs were to really fall off, I think it's kind of obvious that he is. But I think that really he always is. Not much else to be said. Now, I do think that Parsons can go on and have a monster year this year, especially with Trayvon Diggs back, and I think Deron Bland will eventually be back. And having a good secondary can help the pass rushers because obviously if, receivers are covered, quarterbacks are kind of forced to hold on to the ball a little longer, especially when you're playing some weaker quarterbacks. So I do think that Micah Parsons is a favorite for the award this year on terms of players that aren't quarterbacks that could win it. Now, CJ Stroud, I think he obviously has the cast. I'm just not sure if I would really consider him a true contender for the award this year. I just don't want to put too many players up in that top tier. And I think I'm going to keep him out of it. I do think he has a better chance than Jordan Love. I'd say he has a better chance than Josh Allen. But he obviously does have the supporting cast. So we'll put him in the close tier. Because I think he's kind of close to it, but I just don't know if he's quite going to do it. Obviously, that receiver core is great. I think they should trade one of those receivers, actually. You got Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell. I believe maybe Nico Collins is the 4 right now, or he's the 3 or 2. John Mechie. There we go. I don't know why I was blanking out there. But he has 4 good receivers, maybe even great. And I think that maybe John Mechie should be traded just because of how that receiver room is stacked. But he's still looking really good with his weapons around him. Even Joe Mixon now. I believe they have another running back that's solid. Just can't quite put my name on him. But next up, we've got TJ Watt. And I don't know if he's quite not like quite a favorite, at least for me. But I will put him close. And I know it says OPOY. We'll just change it up a little bit because that isn't quite right. But so I think that, maybe he's close, but I just don't know if he's really a favorite for the award. I wouldn't really bank on him to win it, maybe. I would say that he can win Defensive Player of the Year, but I do have a little more faith in Micah Parsons to win the MVP than TJ Watt this year. Obviously, the NFL might look a little bit biased against TJ Watt after giving Myles Garrett the Defensive Player of the Year award this past season. And I kept him off the list just because I didn't really think he fit on it. But next up, we have Tyreek Hill. And I think that he's actually another one of my favorites that's not a quarterback. Just because he's been so good with Tua even, and he just fits so well into the Dolphins scheme. And he is basically their offense. I mean, they have a lot of good players there. They have a good wide receiver trio. But he really is the focal point of their offense, I would say. And he's been close to 2,000 yards, I think, these both past 2 years. If he didn't miss a little bit of time, which it wasn't significant time, but I want to say he was only like 100-something yards away from 2,000 this past year. I don't have the exact number. But obviously with that, I think that he should be a favorite for those guys that aren't quarterbacks in the MVP race. And I feel like it's kind of important to separate it just because if you have all of, these quarterbacks up there, it just doesn't really seem like a balanced list to not separate the quarterback favorites and the ones that aren't. But moving on is Lamar Jackson. And obviously he just won the MVP, but I don't really think he's going to win it this year. And I know it's kind of hard to say that when he just won it, but I think that these other guys are just better fits for him. So he does have the cast, but I would probably put him close. Obviously, he won't win like Offensive Player of the Year. That usually goes to a different position, like running back or receiver. But I think that he'll be close, but he's just not quite there. Now, Dak Prescott up next. I don't really see him as a true contender for the MVP. I think he'll have a fine year. He might even have a pretty solid year because of the contract thing. I actually think it'd be good for the Cowboys to let him walk. And I really think that not re-signing him right now says more than if they were to re-sign him right now. I think that they really do want to see him play this year and see what happens when he plays it out. I'm not a big Dak hater, but I just don't quite see him as a true threat to win the MVP this year over a majority of the guys on this list. Now, up next is Jared Goff. I'd honestly say that he's also just not quite a true contender. I really do like Goff, and he has a pretty good cast around him too. With the Lions did just pick up Tim Patrick. I think he is only on their practice squad though. But their receiver core of Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown isn't too bad. And he can be close, and I know it would be kind of crazy to put him above Dak, but I do have a little bit more faith in that Lions offense to run good overall than that Cowboys, even though both are pretty talented teams. But just because of how full this is, we'll probably put him down here in the not true contenders category. Even though I think that he is definitely, more so in the middle. But moving up next, we have Jalen Hurts. And I actually think he's going to have a huge bounce back this year. I know that Eagles team has just really boosted up. And I feel like I need to have at least one NFC quarterback up there. So I will put him up there in my favorites. And I know there's just so many people low on Jalen Hurts now because of last season. And in my opinion, I think it's just a little too ridiculous. You can sit here and say, oh, well, maybe he's not as good as we thought like a year ago. But I think that it's clear that he's a good quarterback and that some people are just overreacting to the fall off in like the last 6 or 5 games last year. And it's not like he was already having a crazy year, but I just think it's a lot of overreaction saying that he's not as good as we might have thought. Now, moving up is Justin Jefferson. And even though he's a receiver, I think he should go in the doesn't have the cast category. Obviously, he has Jordan Addison that can help take some pressure off of him. But also, Sam Darnold's his quarterback. And I said it in another video, I actually do kind of believe in Sam Darnold to be good this year. I just don't know if he's going to be that good. And if he's actually going to be good enough to win the MVP or really be too close. I don't really know if he'll be close to OPOY either. So I think that doesn't have the cast is probably the best place for him. And last up is Tua. And I'll be honest, I think that because of how elite his cast is, like his cast is better than these 3 guys down here. And his cast is also better than these 2 guys. So I think it's just kind of clear that he is a favorite because of how much his coach believes in him and just because of how much talent is around him. They also have a solid tight end, I believe. I can't put my finger on his name right now. I want to say he came over, maybe Will Disley. I could be super wrong right now and look like an idiot. But Tua does have a fine cast around him. Not, well, way better than fine cast. But I just don't really know if he's one of my favorites. But I think with how good that team around him is, he kind of has to be. So thank you guys for watching this. And I want to hope you guys have a good day. And I hope to have you guys come watch more videos soon. Have a great day.